I was standing at the kitchen counter making my afternoon tea when my daughter dropped the kind of sentence that ends families. "Mom," she said, setting down her phone, "it's time. You should start packing for a nursing home." She didn't look angry. She looked organized, like she was ticking something off her to-do list. Across the table, her husband Greg froze mid-sip of coffee. Even the refrigerator hummed quieter. I stirred my tea, slow and steady. "A nursing home?" I asked. "You mean like a place where they let me watch cable and forget who I am?" Rachel rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Mom. It's not that bad. Silver Pines has great reviews. They do yoga for seniors." I took a small sip. "Sweetheart, the only stretching I'm doing these days is stretching my patience." Greg coughed into his cup, pretending not to smile. Rachel ignored him. "You've been slowing down. It's too much house for you. You can't keep living here alone." That's the part that stung. Not the nursing home, not even the word pack. It was how easily she said alone, like I'd done something wrong by surviving longer than her father. She started talking about logistics, renting movers, selling the furniture, maybe even listing the house. I stopped listening halfway through. I just kept stirring my tea, the spoon tapping the mug like a clock counting down to something. When she finally stopped, waiting for me to argue, I didn't give her the fight she wanted. I just looked up and said quietly, "Turn on the TV first." She frowned. "What?" "Go ahead," I said, nodding toward the remote. "Before we plan my retirement party, let's watch something together." Greg hesitated, glancing between us. "Maybe another time?" "No," I said, smiling. "Now's good." Rachel grabbed the remote like she was about to prove a point. The TV blinked to life, the screen glowing in the reflection of her phone. For a second, it looked like any other afternoon. Sunlight through the blinds, the smell of coffee, the sound of a family pretending to care. Then the screen flickered again and a video started playing. It was our living room. Same couch, same table, same daughter. But this time, Rachel wasn't talking about yoga for seniors. She was in that very room last week, standing with her friend from work, laughing. The video was clear enough to see every expression. "Watch this," Rachel said on the recording, limping across the floor, mocking the way I walk since my hip surgery. Her friend laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. In the present moment, the only sound in the kitchen was the low hum of the TV and Greg's jaw tightening. Rachel's face drained of colour. "Where did you get that?" she snapped. I set my cup down gently. "From the cloud, apparently. Technology's a blessing, isn't it?" Greg tried to say something, but Rachel turned on him. "Did you know about this?" He shook his head. "No, Rachel. I didn't know you were auditioning for stand-up." I almost laughed, but I kept my voice calm. "I installed cameras last year. Remember the package that came from Amazon? You signed for it." Her lips parted, ready to fire back, but nothing came out. I walked closer to the TV, the image still frozen on her laughing face. "You know," I said, "I used to record your dance recitals when you were little. Funny how times change." Rachel looked away, cheeks flushed red. Greg finally stood up, muttering, "I think I'll check the mail." He didn't move. Rachel crossed her arms. "You had no right to film me in my own home." I turned, meeting her eyes. "Your own home?" I asked softly. Silence. "That's what this is really about, isn't it?" I continued. "The house, the money. You think I'm a burden, so it's easier to ship me off somewhere with bingo nights and staff who call me by the wrong name." She tried to speak, but her throat caught the words. I leaned back against the counter, picking up my tea again. "You know, Rachel, I forget where I put my glasses sometimes, but I don't forget where I hide my evidence." Greg choked on a laugh he didn't mean to let out. Rachel glared at him like she could melt his soul. I turned back to the TV. "There's more," I said casually. "Clips, recordings, but let's start with this one. It's short, educational, and free of commercials." Rachel reached for the remote, but I was faster. "Don't worry, honey," I said. "We'll take a commercial break once I'm done being humiliated in high definition." Her shoulders stiffened. "Mom, this is insane." "No," I said. "What's insane is you thinking I wouldn't notice, but go ahead, keep watching." The sound of her laughter from the recording filled the room again, echoing off the walls. It didn't sound funny anymore. It sounded cruel. Emily's footsteps creaked on the stairs. "Mom? Grandma?" Rachel scrambled for the remote, hitting pause. "Nothing, sweetie. Go back upstairs." But I smiled at my granddaughter. "It's okay, Emily. Grandma's just on TV." The girl frowned, sensing tension, and slipped away quietly. Rachel glared at me, voice low. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I smiled again, the kind of slow, patient smile that only comes after decades of family dinners. "Oh, honey, you haven't seen proportion yet." Greg looked from her to me, then back again. "Maybe," he said. "We should hear her out." Rachel turned to him, furious. "Hear her out? She's spying on us!" He shook his head. "No, she's showing us the truth." The air in the room felt heavy, like the start of a storm no one could stop. I reached for my tea one last time, the spoon clinking against the cup, steady as ever. "Let's keep watching," I said softly. "We're just getting to the good part." Rachel's hand was still frozen on the remote when the next clip started. The screen blinked and a new video appeared without me touching a thing. I didn't have to. Technology had perfect timing. This one was from 2 weeks ago, the night Rachel hosted her co-workers in my living room. I remembered staying upstairs that night because she said, "It's just a small get-together, Mom. You'll be more comfortable in your room." I'd believed her. Now, the TV showed what really happened. On the screen, Rachel poured wine for her friends and waved her hand toward the staircase. "That's where my mom hides when people come over," she said, laughing. "She still thinks she owns the place." Laughter filled the room, on the TV and in the memory. Greg looked like he wanted to disappear. His knuckles turned white on his coffee cup. I glanced at him. "You were working late that night, weren't you?" He nodded, his eyes glued to the screen. Rachel tried to grab the remote again. "Okay, Mom, that's enough." The camera footage disagreed. It kept rolling. Rachel's voice came through clear. "Once she moves into Silver Pines, I'm getting this whole place redone. Maybe finally paint over her old yellow walls." I turned my head slowly toward her. "Yellow walls," I repeated. "The ones your father and I painted the week you were born?" Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Greg finally spoke. "You said this was all about helping her, Rachel." Rachel crossed her arms, staring at the floor. "It is. She needs proper care." I raised an eyebrow. "Care or convenience?" The tension was sharp enough to cut the air. The only movement came from the TV's reflection flickering across her face. Rachel muttered, "You're overreacting." "I'm reacting," I said. "Just not the way you expected." The next clip queued up automatically. Rachel sighed and dropped onto the couch. "Mom, seriously, how many of these are there?" 57, I said calmly. "But don't worry, not all of them are about you." Greg exhaled through his nose, half amusement, half dread. The new clip showed my birthday dinner last spring. I had forgotten about that night, but the camera hadn't. Rachel sat across from me at the restaurant, scrolling through her phone while I tried to tell her about my new rose garden. She said on the recording, "Mom, nobody cares about dirt and flowers. You should focus on downsizing." Back in the kitchen, the sound of her own voice made Rachel flinch. Greg muttered, "That's harsh." Rachel turned to him, her tone snapping. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," I said softly. "Pressure's what makes people show who they really are." Greg rubbed his forehead. "Maybe we should just stop for tonight." But the next video was already playing. It was shot at my friend Helen's barbecue last summer. Rachel's voice again, this time laughing to another guest. "My mom thinks she's still useful. Bless her heart." The guest laughed politely. On screen, I smiled and flipped burgers, pretending not to hear. In real life, I remembered that exact moment, the smell of smoke, the heat of embarrassment crawling up my neck. Rachel whispered now, "This is humiliating." I sipped my tea. "You said that last summer too. Only back then, it was about me." Greg pushed back his chair a little, not sure whether to leave or stay. Emily's footsteps creaked again on the stairs. I gave her a quick nod to stay put. She did. Rachel looked up, her eyes glassy with anger. "You can't just record people and air their private conversations." I tilted my head. "Private? You said these things in front of half the neighbourhood. I just saved the highlights." Greg coughed into his hand, but a small laugh escaped anyway. Rachel glared at him. "You think this is funny?" He looked at me, then back at her. "No," he said carefully. "I think it's deserved." For a moment, no one moved. The TV cast a soft light across the room like a stage everyone was trapped on. I stepped closer to my daughter. "Rachel, I didn't show these videos to hurt you. I showed them because I want you to see me again, not as an obstacle, not as an expense, but as your mother. Her eyes met mine, red-rimmed and tired. "You're making me look like a monster." I shook my head. "I don't have to. You did that on camera." The TV went silent. The clip ended. The still frame froze on Rachel's younger face, smiling in mockery. I reached for the remote and turned down the volume. "Don't worry," I said quietly. "The next ones are worse." Greg swallowed hard. "You're really doing this?" I looked at him, my tone calm but certain. "No, Greg, she did this. I'm just playing the reruns." He leaned back, eyes darting between us like a man watching a house of cards start to fall. Rachel pressed her hands against her temples. "I can't believe you're doing this to me." "Believe it," I said, "because the truth doesn't care who believes it." Her jaw clenched. "This is revenge." I took another sip of tea. "No, honey, revenge would have gone viral. This is family therapy with better editing." Greg actually laughed this time, quick and nervous. Rachel's eyes darted toward the door. "I'm not staying here while you humiliate me." "Then where will you go?" I asked. "You said Silver Pines had great reviews." Her mouth fell open, but no sound came out. The TV light flickered again, ready to play another clip. Rachel stared at it like it might explode. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't need to. The silence in that kitchen did the talking for me. Greg finally said it out loud. "Maybe you should just watch the rest." Rachel shot him a look, but he didn't back down this time. The video rolled on its own, and once again her laughter filled the room. Only this time, no one else joined in. The kettle clicked off behind me, but no one moved to pour the water. Rachel sat on the edge of the couch, arms crossed tight, jaw clenched. Greg looked like he'd rather crawl into the floor vents than pick a side. I turned down the TV, letting the room breathe again. "You know," I said quietly, "the thing about hurt feelings is they don't start big. They start small, like splinters." Rachel didn't look up. "Mom, please don't start another speech." "Oh, sweetheart, this one's short," I said, "just a reminder." Her silence gave me permission to keep going. "I remember when your father and I bought this house," I said. "You were 5. He built that little playhouse in the backyard. You painted it purple because you said yellow was too happy for a serious homeowner. Even then you were planning mortgages." Greg tried not to laugh, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him. Rachel muttered, "What's your point?" I nodded toward the screen. "That little girl who wanted her own house grew up to think mine was for sale." She scoffed. "You're twisting everything. We just wanted what's best for you." "Then why did you tell me to pack?" I asked. "People who love you don't hand you a suitcase." Her face tightened, the same look she used to give me in high school whenever she knew she'd been caught lying but refused to admit it. I took my tea, moved to the armchair across from her. "I wasn't always the perfect mother. I know that. But I tried to raise you to tell the truth. So tell me now, why the rush to get me out?" Greg exhaled. "Let her answer," I said. Rachel's eyes flashed. "Fine. You want honesty? You can't keep up anymore. The bills, the yard, the stairs. It's too much." "I thought Silver Pines would be safer." I looked at her, calm as ever. "And the house?" She hesitated. "We figured it'd be easier to handle the property if I wasn't here." I finished for her. The truth hung between us like a draft through an open window. I smiled faintly. "It's funny. I thought losing your father was the hardest betrayal I'd ever feel. Turns out it was just practice." Greg winced. Rachel's face softened for half a second, then hardened again. "Don't make me the villain. I'm doing what every responsible daughter would do." I raised an eyebrow. "Every responsible daughter mocks her mother's limp walk at dinner parties." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "I didn't mean... Intent doesn't erase action," I said. "You teach your daughter that when she lies, don't you?" That one landed. She looked down. Greg finally spoke up. Maybe you should listen to her side, Maggie. She's been under a lot of stress." "Oh, I have," I said, "for months. Every time she called the realtor, every time I heard her whisper about after Mom moves out, I listened plenty." Rachel's head shot up. "You've been spying?" I laughed softly. "No, dear, you've been talking too loud." The air went cold again. I didn't like fighting, but there's a certain calm that comes when the truth finally walks into the room and sits down next to you. "I used to think I was lucky," I said quietly. "Most of my friends had kids who moved to other states and barely called. At least mine wanted to live with me. But now I see it wasn't about closeness, it was convenience." Greg's voice cracked a little. That's not fair. It's not wrong either, I said. No one spoke for a while. The sound of the old clock filled the room, tick, 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 like it was marking down every lie that had just been exposed. Rachel rubbed her temples. You're making this so dramatic. It's just a house. Then why does it hurt so much to lose it? I asked. She looked away, eyes darting toward the front window. Outside, the yard still had the old wooden swing her father built. It creaked in the wind, faint but steady. I watched her watching it. Your dad built that swing with his own hands. When he died, I told myself as long as that swing stayed up, this house would stay ours. You promised you'd keep it too. Her eyes flickered. I was 21. I didn't understand. And now? She didn't answer. Greg cleared his throat. Maybe we should all take a step back, cool off. I nodded. You can. I'm fine. I stood up, walked to the old cabinet near the TV and pulled open a drawer. Inside were stacks of papers, bank statements, bills, property taxes, all neatly labelled. Do you know how many times I almost asked for help, Rachel? She shook her head. None, I said, because I already knew what the answer would be. Greg looked at her. Rachel? I told you, she said defensively. I just wanted to help her move somewhere safer. Safer, I repeated, closing the drawer. That's what people say when they mean somewhere else. Her face twitched. Tell me, I said, when you talked to the realtor, did you tell him I was still alive, or did you skip that part? Greg's eyes widened. What realtor? Rachel's silence answered him. He leaned back, shaking his head. You didn't. Rachel's hands trembled. I just asked for an estimate. That's all. Estimates don't include champagne toasts, I said. Helen saw your little meeting at the cafe last week. Rachel's breath caught. You talked to Helen? She's been my neighbour for 30 years, I said. She tells me everything. That's what friendship looks like. Greg stood up, rubbing his face. I can't do this. I stayed calm, steady. You don't have to. I already am. Rachel pressed her palms to her eyes. You're enjoying this. I shook my head. No, I'm remembering it. The TV flickered again, switching to a still frame from another clip, waiting. Rachel glanced at it like it might come alive. I sat back down, picking up my cup. You might want to pour yourself something stronger, I said softly. The next one's not as funny as you remember. The sound of wind brushed against the window, and the blinds rattled faintly. The still frame on the TV stayed frozen, but I didn't move to stop it. The quiet between us was doing a better job than any clip could. I reached for the remote again and pressed play. The video switched to another day, one that started harmless enough. The date stamp in the corner showed late March. Emily's laughter echoed faintly in the background as the camera panned across the living room. This was the day I had asked her for help. Grandma, she said in the recording, her voice cheerful and bright. Are you sure you want to do this? Cameras are kind of creepy. I laughed in the video, my hands shaking slightly as I held the small white box. Creepy as losing your jewellery and not knowing who took it, I said. She handed me her tablet, showing me how to set it up. Just tap here, it saves everything to the cloud. See? Easy. In the present moment, I looked over at Rachel, who stared at the screen like she'd just seen a ghost of her better self. I didn't install these to spy on anyone, I said evenly. I just wanted to feel safe. The day I found your father's watch missing from the dresser, I realised I couldn't rely on memory anymore. Rachel muttered, You could have told me. I smiled. I could have trusted you. Greg shifted in his seat. You thought someone was stealing from you? I thought someone was lying to me, I said. The next clip jumped forward automatically. It showed Rachel walking through the living room, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was crystal clear. Yeah, once Mom's out, we can finally remodel. I'm thinking open kitchen, hardwood floors, something fresh. Greg's head dropped into his hands. Rachel. She blinked rapidly. That's not what it sounds like. I raised my eyebrows. Then please, enlighten us. Her lips parted, but her brain didn't follow. The silence filled the house like fog. Emily's voice came through faintly in the recording, asking her mom if she wanted to play outside. Rachel didn't answer, too busy planning her open kitchen. I looked straight at her. You know what's funny? You called me old-fashioned for keeping photo albums. Now you're starring in my digital one. Greg almost smiled, but the weight in the room held him back. Rachel's voice cracked. You're taking everything out of context. I turned to her, calm and steady. The context is you wanted me gone. Her eyes watered. It wasn't like that, I nodded. Then tell me how it was. Nothing. I set the remote down and folded my hands. When you were little, you used to sit in your dad's chair after school and tell him about your day. He'd sit there, pretending to read, but really, he just wanted to hear you talk. You never noticed, but I did. He used to say, "She's got my stubborn streak." Guess he was right. Rachel's voice softened. "Don't do this, Mom." "Do what?" I asked. "Remind you who you were before greed started paying rent?" Her face flushed bright red, but her shoulders sank. Greg whispered, "Maybe she just needs a break." "No," I said quietly. "She needs perspective." The next clip loaded without me touching a thing. Rachel in the kitchen talking to someone on speakerphone. "Yes, I understand the paperwork," she said, "but she's old, and honestly, she won't even know what she's signing. We'll just tell her it's for insurance." Her own words echoed off the walls like thunder. Greg's eyes went wide. Rachel looked like she'd been slapped. "That's not, oh my God, this is out of context." Greg stood. "You said that." On the phone. She grabbed her hair with both hands pacing. "I was joking." I leaned back. "You don't sound like someone joking. You sound like someone confident." Rachel turned to me, desperate now. "You're twisting this. You don't understand how stressful things are for us." "I do," I said. "I also understand you were more worried about flooring than family." Greg whispered under his breath, "Jesus, Rachel." I pressed pause on the video. The room went still again. The sound of the old wall clock ticked 3 times before I spoke. "Do you remember when you were 16? I asked. "You totaled your first car. You called me crying from the side of the road. You said, 'Mom, please don't be mad.' And I wasn't. I came and picked you up, hugged you, told you that as long as you told the truth, we'd fix anything." "That was the deal, remember?" She swallowed hard. "Yeah." "Well," I said, "the deal still stands." She blinked. "What?" "You tell me the truth and maybe, just maybe, we can fix something again." Her voice came out as a whisper. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth," I repeated. Her eyes welled up. She looked down, shaking her head, and finally whispered, "I messed up." Greg sat back down slowly, but like a man watching a tightrope act finally reach the end. Rachel wiped her eyes, sniffed hard, and looked at me. "I never meant to hurt you." "I believe you," I said softly. "But you still did." Her tears fell quiet and fast. Greg reached over, hesitated, then rested his hand on her knee. I stood and picked up my cup again. "Don't worry, Rachel," I said, voice calm. "This isn't punishment. This is just the beginning of you finally watching what I've been living." Her head shot up, confused, but the next clip had already started playing. The sound of laughter filled the room. Hers again, at another dinner, another careless night she thought no one was listening. I sipped my tea and said evenly, "You see, dear, the cameras never lied." People did. The laughter on the TV shifted to another clip, this time outdoors. Paper plates, bright balloons, sunlight falling across the yard. I didn't need to see the date stamp to remember it was Emily's 12th birthday. On screen, the camera caught me near the end of the table, wearing that ridiculous paper hat shaped like a cupcake. I'd worn it because Emily begged me to. I even smiled back then, thinking the laughter around me was real. But the camera had no mercy. Rachel's voice came from somewhere behind the lens. "Mom, could you move a little to the side? You're blocking the shot." In the recording, I scooted my chair away, still smiling. I didn't know until now that she'd turned to her friend afterward and whispered, "Perfect. She's not in the frame anymore." Greg exhaled hard. "Jesus, Rachel." Rachel buried her face in her hands. "Please turn that off." "No," I said quietly. "You'll want to see this next part." The clip kept rolling. The kids sang happy birthday. I leaned in beside Emily to help her blow out the candles. The room on screen filled with laughter again, but not the good kind. Rachel's voice cut through, bright and sharp. "Careful, Mom, those are real flames. Don't burn your pension check." Even in the replay, the sound of laughter made my chest ache. It was the same laughter echoing right now in her head, and maybe that was punishment enough. Emily had laughed back then too, because she thought it was just another adult joke. She was too young to know the difference between humour and humiliation. In the present, Rachel whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a joke." I nodded slowly. That's the thing about jokes. They're only funny until the person laughing stops. She covered her face. but her shoulders started shaking, not from crying, but from the kind of guilt that comes when you finally run out of excuses. Greg rubbed the back of his neck. "I remember that day," he said. "You were flipping burgers all afternoon." "I was," I said. "It was hot. Everyone was having a good time. I thought maybe, just maybe, my daughter was proud of me for still being around." Rachel's voice cracked. "You think I'm proud of this?" I looked at her, calm but tired. "I think you forgot how to be proud of anyone but yourself." Greg started to say something, but I lifted my hand slightly. "Don't! Let her sit with it." The clip ended with everyone clapping for Emily. The sound faded out, leaving only the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Rachel finally looked up. Her eyes were red, her mascara smudged. "I'm not this horrible person you're making me look like." "I didn't make you anything," I said. "You filmed your own audition. I just pressed play." Greg tried to help her. "Rach, maybe just apologize." She turned on him, voice raw. "For what? For making a bad joke? For making a pattern," I said, finishing the sentence for him. That landed harder than anything else. She blinked, her mouth opening but nothing coming out. I looked toward the window, the same one that overlooked the old swing set her father built. "You know what the worst part is? It's not what you said. It's that you said it like it was normal, like mocking your mother was a hobby." Her breath came out uneven. "Stop it." "I will," I said, "when you do." The air in the room was thick again. Greg shifted on the couch, torn between wanting to leave and knowing he shouldn't. Emily peeked from the stairs, silent and wide-eyed. I smiled gently at her. "It's okay, sweetheart. Grandma's fine." Rachel wiped her face and looked at her daughter. "Go back upstairs, honey." Emily didn't move. Her voice was small. "Mom, why were you laughing at Grandma?" Rachel froze. That question hung heavier than anything I could have said. Greg reached out to touch Emily's shoulder, but she pulled away and ran back up the stairs, her small footsteps echoing through the hallway. Rachel whispered, "You didn't have to do that in front of her." "She deserved to know who we are," I said. "Both of us." Her glare came back sharp, desperate to find control again. "You think this is teaching her something good? You're embarrassing me in front of my family." "I am your family," I said. "That's the problem. You stopped seeing it." Greg stared at the floor. "Maybe it's time to admit what's really going on, Rachel." She turned to him, angry. "You think I'm the only one?" "You've complained about her too," Greg blinked. "Yeah, but not like that." I tilted my head. "So you did complain," he groaned. "I walked into that one." Even in the chaos, I smiled a little. "Don't worry, Greg. Honesty looks good on you." Rachel's eyes darted between us, looking for an ally and finding none. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You see, Rachel, the problem isn't that you wanted to fix the house or manage things better. The problem is you forgot what the word home means. A home isn't something you sell, it's something you earn." She bit her lip hard, fighting tears again. Greg glanced at me, hesitant. Maybe she can make it right. "She will," I said calmly, "but not yet." Rachel's voice broke. "You can't keep doing this to me." "Doing what?" I asked softly. "Letting you see yourself clearly?" Her breathing hitched. "You're not helping anything." I smiled. "I'm helping you understand consequences. It's the first step to forgiveness." Her eyes widened. "Forgiveness? You think you get to forgive me?" "Oh no, dear," I said. "You're the one who'll need it." The TV screen went dark for a moment, then flickered to life again. The next video cued automatically. A dinner table, champagne glasses, and a restaurant I remembered too well. Rachel's voice echoed faintly, raising a toast to freedom. Greg looked up sharply. "Wait, is that—" I didn't answer. The sound of clinking glasses filled the room as the clip began to play. Rachel didn't move. The video at the restaurant faded out. Then another one appeared. One I hadn't even planned to show yet. I didn't need to. The cloud had its own sense of timing. The recording was from Rachel's office, the one she set up in the guest room that used to be my sewing space. The camera had a perfect view of her desk, and her voice came through sharp and clear. "Yeah, once Mom's in the home, we'll refinance," she said. "It'll finally be worth something." Greg's hand dropped from his mouth. "You recorded this too?" "I didn't plan to," I said. "The camera caught everything by accident. I just forgot to turn it off." Rachel stood up, her face drained. "That's private. You can't just—" "Private?" I asked. "You mean the part where you put a price tag on your own mother?" The room felt colder. Rachel froze. staring at the TV as her own voice filled the space again. I mean, look, she's got her pension and savings. It's not like she needs all that space. Once she's out, we can flip it. Maybe even get a pool. Greg looked like he was about to be sick. You told me your mom wanted this. Rachel's voice trembled. I was trying to fix our debt. You don't know how much pressure we're under. I shook my head. Pressure doesn't excuse cruelty. Everyone's under pressure. Not everyone sells their parents for relief. Rachel's face twisted. You don't understand how hard it's been for us. You live here for free. I laughed softly. Free? Rachel, I paid off this house twice, once with your father and once again when you almost lost it. She blinked. What are you talking about? I looked at Greg. Did she ever tell you about the second mortgage? He frowned. No. What second mortgage? Rachel's eyes darted away. Mom, I set my cup down. The one I paid off 10 years ago when you were starting your real estate career. You said you needed a little help. I signed the papers without hesitation because you were my daughter. I didn't ask for it back. I thought I was helping you build a future. Greg turned toward her, disbelief on his face. You never told me that, she muttered. It's ancient history. No, I said. It's character. Her voice rose. You think you're better than me? You act like some perfect saint who never made mistakes. I smiled thinly. No, dear, I made plenty. My biggest one was thinking gratitude was genetic. Greg covered his mouth, trying to keep from saying something that would make this worse. Rachel started pacing, hands shaking. You've been planning this, she said. You've been waiting to humiliate me. I was waiting for honesty, I said. The humiliation's a bonus. She spun toward Greg. Say something. He didn't. He just looked at her with the kind of silence that hurts more than shouting. The next part of the video continued to play. Rachel's voice again, laughing with her financial advisor. Yeah, once Mom's out, we can use her savings for the down payment. It's like a long-term discount. Even the cat walked into the room at that moment, paused, looked at Rachel, then sat down with its back to her. Greg rubbed his temples, muttering, You actually said that out loud. Rachel's voice broke. I didn't mean it. I was just venting. Then you picked the wrong audience, I said. Her eyes were glassy with tears she refused to let fall. You're enjoying this, aren't you? No, I said. I'm documenting it. She dropped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. You're destroying our family. I sat back down, calm and steady. No, Rachel, you did that when you stopped treating it like one. Greg spoke quietly. You've been lying to me about everything, haven't you? She didn't answer. He looked at me. Maggie, I don't even know what to say. Say what's true, I said. It's a good start. Rachel glared at me through her tears. You can't just throw all this at me like some courtroom drama. You're supposed to be my mother. I am, I said. That's why I'm giving you a chance to face it before someone else does. The TV went silent. The screen showed the last frame of the video, Rachel sitting at her desk, smiling at her phone, oblivious to the fact that her own words were being saved in crystal clarity. I picked up the remote, the reflection of the TV light catching the edge of my glasses. You know, when you were little, I said, you used to draw houses and label them home, not property, not investment, just home. You lost that somewhere along the way. Rachel looked up slowly, her voice small. What are you going to do? I smiled faintly. You'll see, I'm just getting started. Greg turned toward me. Maggie, maybe that's enough for tonight. I nodded. Maybe, but I think there's one more thing we should all hear before we take a break. Rachel's face tightened. Please, Mom. I can't. I pressed play again. The screen switched to a newer recording, the one from her phone call with that same financial advisor, only this time it was recent, just a few days ago. Her voice came through again, weary but confident. Once Mom's papers are signed, we'll be in the clear. She doesn't even check her bank account anymore. Greg went pale. Rachel froze. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my tea. You know, I may forget where I leave my glasses, I said, but I never forget who tries to take what isn't theirs. No one said a word. The TV light flickered across their faces, the sound of Rachel's voice looping one last time in the background. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was justice. Slow, heavy, and perfectly timed. Rachel sat frozen, her mouth half open like her brain had forgotten how to form excuses. The TV light flickered against her face, each flash like a reminder of another mistake she couldn't take back. Greg hadn't said a word in minutes. The cat had given up pretending to care and curled up under my chair like it was watching a slow-motion car crash. I picked up the remote, switched inputs, and pressed a single button. The static disappeared, replaced by the current feed from the living room camera. "Wait," Rachel said, blinking. "What is that?" "The present," I said simply. On screen was the same room we stood in, captured from another angle, the ceiling corner where the little camera's red light blinked softly. We could see ourselves the same way everyone else would if they tuned in. Rachel's eyes widened. "That's live?" "Very," I said, taking another sip of tea. "Wave if you want." Greg stared at the TV. "You're showing us." "Us?" "Yes," I said. "Seems only fair that we all see what honesty looks like when it finally walks in the door." Rachel backed away from the screen as if it might reach out and touch her. "You can't just... This is insane." "No," I said calmly. "Insane is using someone's electricity to plan their eviction. This is balance." Greg's lips twitched like he was about to smile, but he caught himself. Rachel spun toward him. "You think this is funny?" He shrugged. "I think it's overdue." The Wi-Fi name appeared in the bottom corner of the feed. Mom still owns the home. The router blinked like it was in on the joke. Rachel's voice cracked. "You changed the Wi-Fi name?" "Oh, that?" I said, pretending to think. No, I renamed it after you started sending emails about refinancing your property. Figured it might help you remember who's paying for that laptop." Greg gave a small, awkward cough that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Rachel's face flushed red. "This isn't a game!" "I agree," I said. "Games have rules." For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint whir of the camera above us, steady and merciless. Rachel's voice softened, desperate now. "Mom, I don't want to fight anymore." "Then stop fighting the truth," I said. She crossed her arms. "You're trying to make me feel guilty." I raised an eyebrow. "No, I'm letting you make yourself feel guilty. I'm just providing the visuals." Greg finally leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Maggie, you've made your point." I shook my head. "No, Greg, I haven't." He looked uneasy. "What else could there be?" "Perspective," I said. "Something both of you seem short on." I pressed another button, and the live feed split into two windows, the current one on the left, another from 2 days ago on the right. In that recording, Rachel was sitting on the couch while I was upstairs napping. She looked exhausted, holding her head in her hands. Greg stood beside her, saying something quiet. Rachel's recorded voice came through faintly. "I can't take her anymore, Greg. Every time she talks, I feel like I'm drowning in guilt. I just want it to stop." Greg's recorded voice replied softly, "Then talk to her, not around her." She'd sighed and muttered, "It's too late for that." Back in the present, Greg looked at her again, slower this time. "You knew it was too late," he said. Rachel's face crumbled. "I didn't mean—" "You did," I said gently, "and that's why we're here." The screen returned to the live view. Rachel wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara. "You don't get it," she said. "I was scared. We were drowning in bills. The house was our only chance. I thought—" "That I'd be gone soon anyway?" I said, finishing her sentence for her. Her lips trembled. "I didn't mean it like that." I set my cup down carefully, the clink echoing in the quiet. "You meant it exactly like that. The problem isn't that you thought it. It's that you said it out loud and called it practical." Greg looked away, ashamed for both of them. Rachel whispered, "So what now? You humiliate me until I break?" I gave a small, tired smile. "No, dear, I'm not breaking you. I'm reminding you what integrity sounds like. It's been missing from this house for a while." The cat stretched and meowed like it agreed. Rachel glared at it. "Even the cat hates me now." I shrugged. "Animals are good judges of character." Greg ran a hand through his hair. "Maggie, I'll admit this. This is intense. But what do you want from her?" I looked at both of them. "Acknowledgement. Nothing more. The kind of honesty money can't buy and pride can't fake." Rachel's voice was small. "And if I give it, then maybe we can start talking about forgiveness," I said. "But first, you need to understand something." Her eyes lifted. "What?" "The house," I said. "It's still in my name." Greg sat up straight. Rachel froze. "What do you mean, still in your name?" "Exactly that," I said. "You never finished the transfer papers. You filed an application, sure, but you never got it notarized. You didn't even pay the fee." She blinked hard. "That can't be right." "Oh, it's right," I said, pulling a folded document from the drawer next to me. My lawyer confirmed it yesterday. Greg leaned forward, scanning the heading on the page. Deed of ownership. Margaret Hensley. Rachel's face drained of what little colour she had left. You're lying. I placed the paper on the table in front of her. You can read it yourself, dear, but maybe sit down first. Gravity's cruel at our age. Greg glanced between us, then slowly started to smile. You really checked the paperwork? Of course, I said. I might forget my grocery list, but not the deed to my own home. Rachel's voice trembled. So what? You're just going to throw us out? I shook my head. No, I'm not heartless, but it seems only fair that the real homeowner gets to set the new terms. Greg looked nervous now. What kind of terms? I smiled faintly. Don't worry, you'll find them quite reasonable. Rachel whispered, Mom, please don't do this. Oh, Rachel, I said softly, you already did. The TV camera caught her face perfectly in that moment. Shock, fear, and something deeper. Recognition, the realization that for once, she wasn't holding the power anymore. And the beautiful part was, I didn't have to raise my voice or slam a door. All I had to do was let the truth play itself. Rachel stared at the document like it was written in another language. Her fingers hovered just above the paper, trembling, as if touching it would make the truth harder to deny. This isn't possible, she whispered. The realtor said everything was already cleared. I took a slow sip of tea, then set the cup down. Did your realtor also tell you that unsigned paperwork doesn't magically change ownership? Or that pretending you understand real estate law doesn't make you a lawyer? Greg rubbed the back of his neck, half in disbelief, half in relief. So, you still legally own this house? Every nail, every shingle, every blade of grass, I said, smiling. Technically, you're both my tenants. Rachel's eyes snapped toward him. Greg, say something. He stared at me, then let out a low whistle. Well, this just got biblical. She glared at him. This isn't funny. Oh, it's not, I said, but it is poetic. She slammed her hands against the table. You can't just... What are you going to do? Charge us rent? I leaned back, enjoying the silence before answering. I could, or I could do something even better. Her voice rose. Better? You've completely lost it. Greg sighed, eyes still on the paper. You really didn't check the deed, did you, Rach? She spun toward him. I was told. He cut her off, shaking his head. You were told a lot of things. By yourself. The look she gave him could have peeled paint off the walls. I slid another envelope across the table. That one, I said, is the sale contract. Rachel froze. You sold the house? Correction, I said. I transferred it to a company called Silver Grove Senior Living, LLC. Her voice cracked. You sold it out from under us? Greg blinked, stunned. Wait, Silver Grove, is that the one down on Maple Street, the place with all the assisted living homes? That's the one, I said. Lovely people. They're opening a new branch right here. This house will be the pilot property. Rachel's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. You mean they're turning this into a care facility? Technically, I said, a residential care community. Sounds nicer, doesn't it? Greg sat back, eyes wide. You're staying here? Oh, of course, I said, smiling. It's part of the life lease clause. I get lifetime residency. Rent-free, meals, cleaning, medical visits, everything included. I'll be their first resident and honorary community ambassador. Rachel's voice was almost a whisper. You can't be serious. Dead serious, I said. And since you and Greg already live here, the company offered a special arrangement. You can stay as tenants for $1,200 a month. Includes utilities and mandatory volunteer hours. Greg blinked. Volunteer hours? Yes, I said cheerfully. Community service, helping maintain the property, organising activities for residents, maybe teaching a yoga class or two. I hear that's very in. Rachel looked like she might faint. You've lost your mind. I smiled kindly. No, dear, I've finally used it. Greg covered his mouth, a mix of disbelief and awe. So let me get this straight. You just turned your daughter's eviction plan into a business? Not just a business, I said. A community. Silver Grove Home Care, the Hensley House. They're branding it around me. I even approved the logo. He let out a breathy laugh. This is unreal. Rachel's voice broke again. Mom, this isn't fair. Fair? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You mean like convincing your mother to pack her life into boxes for your financial convenience? You might want to pick another word. Greg leaned forward. When did you even set this up? I smiled, while you two were busy complaining about the cost of my prescriptions. Rachel covered her face with both hands. I can't believe this. I can, I said softly. I've had a lot of time to think, Rachel. Every insult, every whisper, every time you forgot I was in the room, it all added up. And one day I realized something simple. I don't need to win an argument to prove a point. I just need to own the roof over it. Greg stared at me, shaking his head slowly. You really planned this for months. Longer, I said. But let's not call it planning. Let's call it preparation. Rachel's voice trembled. You're humiliating me, I sighed. No, honey, I'm educating you. You should thank me. It's the most expensive real estate lesson you'll ever get. Greg stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the yard. So, this place is going to have other residents? Yes, 6 rooms, a shared kitchen, a therapy garden. They're installing safety rails next week. Rachel whispered. You're letting strangers live here? Strangers? I said. You mean people who actually treat me with kindness? I'll risk it. Greg chuckled under his breath. Got to admit, Rach, that's karma with paperwork. She turned on him, furious. You think this is funny? She's turning our home into a nursing home. Our home, I said quietly. That's adorable. She glared at me. You can't make us stay here and pay rent. Of course not, I said. You can always leave. But if you do, the contract requires 60 days notice and forfeiture of your security deposit. Greg blinked. She gave us a lease. Oh, I did, I said. Signed, sealed and notarized. Rachel stared at me in disbelief. You're unbelievable. I tilted my head. That's the nicest thing you've said to me all year. The air was still, thick with the weight of realization. Rachel leaned back in her chair, eyes glassy, while Greg tried and failed to stop smiling. I picked up my tea again. Don't worry, Rachel, you'll get used to it. The staff are lovely, the coffee's better than yours, and they've already ordered my new nameplate for the door, Margaret Hensley, founder and first resident. Rachel's voice cracked. You actually went through with it? I nodded. Completely. Greg whistled again, low and slow. Well, I'll be damned. No, Greg, I said, smiling. You'll be employed. Rachel blinked. What? Tenants are required to participate in community upkeep, I said. You'll both be helping out as part of your agreement. Think of it as giving back. Greg laughed despite himself. Rachel buried her face in her hands again. I leaned back, satisfied. It's amazing how life works, isn't it? One day your daughter's planning your move to a care home, and the next she's the one unpacking boxes. Greg was still standing by the window, staring out at the yard like he expected the world to look different now that he knew who really owned the house. Rachel hadn't spoken in several minutes. She just sat there, hands gripping her knees, her face blank and pale. I took the quiet as permission to keep going. The thing about power, I said softly, is people think it comes from shouting, but real power comes from paperwork. Greg let out a low laugh before catching himself. Rachel shot him a look sharp enough to draw blood. Oh, don't be mad at him, I said. He's just realizing what you forgot. Every empire ends the day as the day the owner checks the deed. Rachel's head snapped up. You planned this whole thing just to embarrass me? I smiled. No, sweetheart. I planned it to teach you. The embarrassment is just your way of learning. She stood, pacing, her voice tight. You can't just make us tenants like we're strangers. I didn't, I said. You did that when you stopped acting like family. Greg turned around from the window. So, this lease thing, it's real? I nodded. It's sitting right there on the table. You both signed it without knowing it, actually. Rachel frowned. What are you talking about? That day you asked me to sign those papers you said were for medical consent forms. Remember that? I said. I noticed the second page wasn't what you said it was. So I printed my own version later and added it to the pile. The notary didn't even blink. Apparently, people sign all kinds of things when they're too busy scrolling their phones. Greg's jaw dropped. You tricked us? I grinned. You tricked yourselves. I just let the pen do the talking. Rachel sat down hard. I can't believe you did that. Oh, I can, I said. After all, you taught me that the best time to strike is when someone underestimates you. Greg rubbed his temples. So what does this mean now? It means, I said, I'm the landlord, you're the tenants, your rent starts next month, but don't worry, it's affordable, I'm not greedy. Rachel looked up, tears forming again. Affordable? We can barely afford groceries right now, I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. You told me I was a burden. Congratulations, you just became my income stream. Greg started laughing, shaking his head. You really flipped the script on her. Oh, I pointed at him with my teaspoon. Technically on both of you. Rachel turned toward him. Don't laugh at this. This is insane. He took a step toward me. Maggie, you're serious about this rent thing? As a heart attack, I said. And if you're late, I charge interest. Rachel slumped against the couch, her voice low. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I looked at her. I'm enjoying watching you realise I'm not as fragile as you thought. Greg finally sat down. So, if this house is becoming a care centre, what happens to us exactly? You stay, I said, as tenants and helpers. You'll assist the staff with upkeep, maybe help serve meals or organise events. I think it'll build character. He smirked. So basically, we're working for you. That's the spirit, I said cheerfully. Rachel muttered, You've lost your mind. No, I said, I've just stopped pretending I don't have one. The sound of a car pulling up outside interrupted us. A van door slid open, followed by footsteps. Greg glanced out the window. Someone's here. Right on time, I said. 2 women in polos with Silver Grove Home Care logos appeared at the door. One of them knocked, smiling. Hi, Mrs. Hensley. We're here to do the property walkthrough and install the welcome signage. Rachel looked like she might actually faint. Welcome signage? The taller woman smiled politely. Yes, ma'am. You must be Mrs. Grant. You're listed as a tenant. We'll have a sign out front that says, The Hensley House, a Silver Grove community home. Rachel turned to me, speechless. I waved them in. Come on, ladies. You can start by the porch. Make sure they spell it right. Hensley with an S, not a Z. Greg stepped aside as they carried in boxes. One of the women handed me a small envelope. Your founder package, Mrs. Hensley. Business cards, official documents, and your resident badge. I opened it, pulled out a glossy card, and held it up. Founder and first resident. It read under my name. Rachel sank lower on the couch. You're unbelievable. Flattery will get you nowhere, I said. But rent payments might. Greg was now fully grinning. You've turned this whole situation into a business empire, haven't you? Not an empire, I said. A legacy. The staff continued working quietly, setting up a banner near the doorway. The golden letters gleamed when the sunlight hit. Welcome home, Mrs. Hensley. Rachel muttered, That's sick. I smiled at her. No, Rachel, that's success. The shorter woman looked up. We'll have everything ready for the open house next week. Should we confirm your media interview? Rachel's head shot up. Media interview? Oh, yes, I said. They're doing a story about senior empowerment for the local news. Isn't that lovely? Greg laughed so hard he had to sit down again. This just keeps getting better. Rachel covered her face. You're humiliating me in front of the whole neighbourhood. No, I said softly. You did that to yourself when you underestimated the woman who raised you. Greg wiped tears of laughter from his eyes. You really are something else, Maggie. I nodded. I learned from the best. Life. Rachel's breathing was uneven now. I can't do this. I can't live here like this. I looked at her calm and steady. Then you can move, but if you stay, you follow the rules. No gossip, no mockery, no lies, just respect. She glared at me. You think this fixes anything? It doesn't have to fix everything, I said. It just has to fix me. Greg looked at both of us, the ghost of a smile still on his face. Well, guess I'd better get used to calling my mother-in-law landlord. I chuckled. You'd better. Late fees are brutal. The women at the door finished hanging the sign and stepped back. The words shimmered against the white paint. The Hensley House, where family finds its way back. I looked at it for a long moment, then turned to Rachel. Fitting, isn't it? She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. The morning light poured through the kitchen window, glinting off the new gold letters on the front sign. The Hensley House, a Silver Grove community home. Every time the breeze moved the curtains, I could see those words catch the sun. Rachel couldn't look at them without flinching. She sat at the table in her robe, staring at a half-empty cup of coffee. Greg, still in his work clothes, leaned on the counter like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or run away. I walked in with my planner under one arm. All right, I said cheerfully. Today's the first day of community orientation. You'll both want to be on time. Rachel groaned. You're still serious about that? Of course, I said. Silver Grove doesn't just hand out rent discounts for pretty smiles. You owe 12 volunteer hours a month. I signed you up for 4 apiece this week. Greg raised an eyebrow. Doing what exactly? I flipped open my planner. Greg, you'll help fix the porch railing. Your tool bag's already by the door. Rachel, you're baking for the welcome lunch. I told them you make an excellent lemon pie. Her head shot up. I don't bake. Then today's a good day to start, I said, pouring myself tea. Greg muttered, half under his breath. This is karma in a cardigan. Rachel glared at him. You think this is funny? He shrugged. It's kind of poetic. We told your mom to move into a care home and now we work for one. That's irony, babe. She groaned again, clutching her forehead. I can't believe this is happening. Oh, it's happening, I said. And if you keep pouting, I might assign you laundry duty too. The residents deserve clean linens. Greg snorted. You're ruthless. I smiled. No, I'm structured. The doorbell rang. Rachel jumped. Please tell me that's not another delivery truck. It's the volunteer coordinator, I said, heading for the door. Try not to look like hostages. A cheerful woman named Denise stepped in, clipboard in hand. Good morning, everyone. Ready for orientation? Greg gave a mock salute. Rachel muttered something about cruel and unusual punishment. Denise beamed. We're so grateful for your help. Families like yours make these communities special. And Mrs. Hensley, she turned to me. The company couldn't stop talking about how inspiring your story was. They said you turned adversity into opportunity. I smiled politely. Well, life's too short to wait for someone else to fix it. Rachel's eyes rolled so hard I thought she might strain something. Denise didn't notice. We'll have our first official residents arriving next month. 2 couples, 1 widower and a retired nurse. It'll be a full house. Rachel choked on her coffee. You mean people will live here? Yes, Denise said brightly. It's such a beautiful space. We'll make minor adjustments, safety rails, extra storage, that sort of thing. Greg tried not to laugh. Rachel looked ready to faint. Denise handed them each a volunteer badge. We appreciate your partnership. You'll be helping us build something truly meaningful. As soon as she left, Rachel turned to me. You can't seriously let strangers move into our home. I sipped my tea. Our home? You mean my investment property? Greg whistled softly. You've really got her cornered. Rachel slammed her hand on the table. This isn't fair, Mom. I looked at her calmly. Neither is being mocked by your own daughter, but life isn't about fairness. It's about balance. You tipped the scales. I just set them straight. Her voice cracked. You're punishing me. No, I said. I'm teaching you. There's a difference. Punishment ends. Lessons stick. Greg rubbed his chin, thoughtful. You know, she's right. You could have just yelled at us, but this is genius. Rachel glared at him. Greg! He raised his hands. Hey, I'm just saying, she's like a real-life plot twist. I smiled. Thank you, Greg. I'll take that as a compliment. He chuckled. It was one. Rachel slumped in her chair. So, what, you get to sit around drinking tea while we do chores for your new business? Oh, honey, I said. This isn't a business. It's rehabilitation. Greg nearly spit out his coffee. Rachel buried her face in her hands. You're impossible. I leaned forward. You called me useless. Now you'll learn what productive looks like. Don't think of it as punishment. Think of it as community service for your soul. Greg laughed openly. She's not wrong. Rachel shot him a glare that could start a forest fire. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm on the side that pays rent, he said. I stood, clapping my hands once. Good. Now that we've all agreed on the hierarchy, let's get to work. Rachel mumbled something unrepeatable as she pushed back her chair. While they shuffled around, I walked over to the window. Outside, the Silver Grove van was unloading paint cans and flower boxes. A small sign sat on the lawn. Coming soon. The Hensley house where kindness feels like home. For the first time in months, I felt peace settle in my chest. Not pride, not revenge, just peace. The kind that comes when the truth finally takes its place at the table. Rachel passed behind me, muttering, This is humiliating. I smiled. Not really. Humility's good for the heart. Greg picked up a hammer from the counter. Guess I'd better start with that porch. Good idea, I said. You might want to tighten the loose steps. Wouldn't want our guests falling before they move in. Rachel grumbled, pulling out her phone. I'm not baking. I'll just order something. I raised an eyebrow. Using my Wi-Fi? Her thumb froze mid-scroll. Greg laughed so hard he nearly dropped the hammer. Don't worry, I said sweetly. I'll add it to your utilities fee. Rachel gave me a look of pure disbelief. You're actually keeping track? Every penny, I said. That's what responsible landlords do. She huffed and walked off toward the kitchen. You've completely lost it. Greg watched her go, shaking his head. You know, Maggie, I think she'll thank you one day. Oh, I know she will, I said. The question is whether I'll still let her. He laughed again, heading for the porch. You're colder than my ex-wife. I'm warmer than your paycheck, I said with a wink. He stopped mid-step, then burst out laughing. Touché. The air filled with the sound of hammering, clattering pans, and the faint hum of the new sign swaying outside. It was the music of redemption, loud, messy, and wonderfully human. By the second week, the sound of hammers and laughter had replaced the shouting that once filled the house. Greg had taken to his tenant duties like a man trying to earn back karma points, fixing everything from the porch railing to the back steps. Rachel, on the other hand, worked with the enthusiasm of someone digging her own grave, quiet, tense, and overly dramatic about every nail. That morning, I found her in the kitchen, surrounded by grocery bags. Flour dusted her hair, sugar clung to her sleeves, and the counter looked like a bakery explosion. I'm guessing this is your version of the lemon pie? I asked, stepping around a fallen whisk. She shot me a glare. You said volunteer baking. You didn't say how good it had to be. I smiled, sniffing the air. Smells like bitterness and overbaking, very symbolic. Greg chuckled from the hallway. She's been at it for hours. I think she's trying to bribe her way out of this. Rachel groaned. I'm trying to help. Isn't that what you wanted? What I want, I said, is effort, not excuses. She slammed the oven door shut, muttering something under her breath. I ignored it and looked around. The table was covered with volunteer forms and to-do lists from Silver Grove. The transformation was well underway, handrails installed, new lighting in the hall, and a fresh coat of paint drying on the walls. The house smelled of lemon cleaner and progress. Rachel wiped her hands on a towel and sighed. You're enjoying this too much. I'm enjoying the quiet, I said. For once the house feels alive in a good way. Greg walked in carrying a toolbox. His shirt was stained with paint and sweat, but there was a faint smile on his face. The porch is almost done. The contractor said we just need to sign off on the inspection. Rachel gave him a look. You're really fine with all this, living like some handyman in your mother-in-law's care centre? He shrugged. It beats living in debt. Plus, I haven't seen her this happy in years. I patted his shoulder. Smart man, you'll live longer. He grinned. I'm trying. Rachel rolled her eyes. You're both impossible. Greg nodded toward her. You know, Rach, maybe she's not the villain here. Her head whipped around. Excuse me? He leaned on the counter. You wanted control. You thought the house was your security, but you forgot the person who made it one. Her face softened, but only a little. I was scared, Greg. We were drowning. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't have to sell your mom to keep your head above water, he said gently. She blinked, the first tear falling before she could stop it. You think I don't know that now? I looked away, pretending to stir my tea, giving her the dignity of not being watched. After a long pause, I said quietly, fear makes people do selfish things, but once you start calling fear practicality, that's when you forget who you are. Rachel wiped her face. I thought I was protecting us. I met her eyes. No, you were protecting comfort. They're not the same thing. The oven dinged, breaking the silence. She pulled out the pie, slightly burned on one side, golden on the other. Greg leaned over it and smiled. Looks like life, half disaster, half miracle. Even she couldn't help but laugh. Set it on the counter, I said. We'll take it to the welcome meeting this afternoon. She frowned. You're actually bringing this? Of course, I said. It's homemade. That's what matters. Greg raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? I smirked. I said homemade, not edible. He burst out laughing, and Rachel cracked a reluctant smile. For the first time in weeks, the tension started to lift. Later that afternoon, the Silver Grove staff arrived to host the first community gathering. Folding chairs lined the living room, now cleared and bright. Neighbours, volunteers, and a few early residents came in carrying casseroles and flowers. Rachel stood by the window, looking uncomfortable but present. Greg chatted with a volunteer, explaining how he'd reinforced the railing. I watched them from my favourite armchair, the one by the window it used to feel too big for one person. Denise, the coordinator, clinked her glass for attention. Everyone, thank you for coming. Today we celebrate the beginning of something special. The Hensley house isn't just a care home, it's a second chance for connection. Applause filled the room. Rachel clapped softly, eyes on the floor. Denise smiled at me. And none of this would have happened without Mrs. Hensley, whose generosity and vision made this possible. I stood up, straightened my cardigan and looked around. I didn't do much, I said. I just refused to let love die in paperwork. A few people laughed softly. I glanced at Rachel. Family's a funny thing. We spend half our lives trying to protect it and the other half pretending we don't need it. But if we're lucky, we live long enough to realise it's both our burden and our blessing. The room went quiet. Even Rachel looked up, tears in her eyes again. I smiled gently. So, welcome. This house has seen mistakes, forgiveness, and a few questionable pies. But from now on, it's a place where no one gets pushed out, only pulled in. The applause that followed was warm, genuine. Greg wrapped an arm around Rachel's shoulders. She didn't resist. After the crowd dispersed, Rachel lingered by the table, staring at the half-eaten pie. You really meant all that? She asked softly. Every word, I said. She nodded slowly. Then maybe I'll bake another one. This time I'll try not to burn it. I smiled. Good idea. Growth tastes better that way. Greg looked at her with something close to pride. See? She's learning. Rachel turned toward me, her voice trembling but steady. Mom, I'm sorry. I nodded once. Apology accepted. She blinked. Just like that? Yes, I said, because I didn't build this house for grudges. I built it for people to come home to. The afternoon light spilled through the window again, landing on the gold sign outside. Rachel followed my gaze and whispered, It really does look beautiful out there. I smiled. It's amazing what happens when you finally see what's been in front of you the whole time. The following months turned the old house into something entirely new. What used to echo with arguments now hummed with conversation and laughter. You could smell coffee brewing in the mornings, hear the clatter of dishes during lunch, and catch the soft sound of music from the recreation room in the evenings. The Hensley house was no longer a project. It was alive. Rachel had stopped fighting the idea somewhere along the way. It happened quietly, like all real changes do. One morning she came downstairs early, hair tied back, carrying a tray of muffins. For the residents, she said quickly, pretending it wasn't a big deal. Greg looked at her, smiled, and didn't say a word. That was when I knew things were shifting. She helped the new residents unpack, showing them where to find towels and which cabinet squeaked. She laughed with them, cried with one of the widows when her dog passed away, and even taught a retired nurse how to use her phone to video call her son. Watching her slowly relearn kindness was like watching spring sneak up on winter. Subtle, but unstoppable. Greg was thriving too. The man who once spent weekends glued to sports was now out fixing garden benches, mowing the lawn, and helping one of the elderly residents install bird feeders. He'd become the unofficial handyman/therapist. People came to him with leaky faucets and life problems in the same breath. And me? I'd found my place again. Not just in the house, but in life. The local news ran a short segment about the Hensley house one evening. A daughter's mistake turned into a mother's miracle, the anchor said. They showed clips of our community centre, residents gardening, Greg fixing the porch, Rachel handing out lemonade. When the camera panned to me, sitting on the porch swing with a book in my lap, I smiled at the lens and said, Home isn't what you own, it's what you take care of. After that, donations started coming in. Local shops dropped off blankets and snacks, kids from the high school painted murals in the hallways, and even the mayor stopped by for a tour. Everyone wanted to be part of it. Rachel joked one morning, You're famous now, Mom. Should I start calling you CEO? I grinned. Please, CEO stands for Chief Elder Officer. Keep it respectful. She laughed, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her since she was a teenager. Later that week, she came to me with a stack of papers. I did something, she said cautiously. Don't panic. That's rarely how good news starts, I said, taking my glasses from the counter. She handed me the papers. It was an application. The Hensley House applying for non-profit status. It'll help us get grants, she explained. More residents, better funding, less stress for everyone. I looked up at her. You thought of this? She shrugged, embarrassed. Greg helped, but yeah. I reached out, touched her hand gently. That's the smartest thing you've ever done that didn't involve marrying him. She laughed. You're welcome. For the first time in a long time, I saw something new in her eyes. Not pride, not guilt, but purpose. The kind that grows from finally understanding what really matters. That afternoon, we hosted our first official open house. Neighbours came by to see the renovations, local officials dropped off pamphlets, and the mayor gave a short speech. Even Emily, our sweet granddaughter, had set up a lemonade stand out front with a sign that read, "Support Grandma's Home of Heroes." Rachel pretended to scold her. "Heroes? Really?" Emily grinned. "You said Grandpa's a hero for fixing stuff and Grandma's a hero for teaching you not to be mean." Greg choked on his drink, trying not to laugh. Rachel blushed, muttered, "Kids repeat everything," and handed me a cup of lemonade. When the crowd finally thinned, the house felt warm in that full, satisfied way homes do after a good day. I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip low behind the trees. Rachel joined me, 2 mugs of tea in her hands. She handed me one and said quietly, "I never said thank you." I raised an eyebrow. "For the rent payments?" She smirked. "For not giving up on me." I took a sip of tea. "You were worth the investment." She smiled faintly. "I guess you were right about the cameras." "I usually am," I said, "but you didn't need footage to see yourself. You just needed time." Rachel leaned back against the railing, watching the residents chatting near the garden. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I thought turning this house into a care home would ruin it, but it feels more like home now than it ever did." I nodded slowly, because now it's full of people who care. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing. The air smelled like cut grass and lemon cleaner. Somewhere inside, someone was playing an old Sinatra song. Greg's laughter echoed through the open windows. Rachel broke the silence. "Do you ever regret it?" I looked at her. "Which part?" "Selling the house, changing everything." I smiled. "No, you don't lose something by letting it evolve. You just learn what was worth keeping." She nodded, quiet, thoughtful. "You really turned the whole thing around, didn't you?" "Not alone," I said. "You helped, even when you didn't mean to." Rachel laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're never going to let me live that down, are you?" "Probably not," I said, smiling. The porch light flicked on automatically as dusk settled in. The sign out front glowed gently. "The Hensley House, where family finds its way back." Rachel followed my gaze and whispered, "It's still so strange seeing our name on a sign like that." I took another slow sip of tea. "It's not strange, honey. It's legacy." She nodded, eyes glistening, and for once there was no sarcasm, no tension, just peace. The same kind I'd been waiting for since the day she told me to pack my bags. Greg called from inside. "Ladies, who wants dessert? The residents say I make better pie than Rachel." Rachel groaned. "He's never letting that go." I chuckled. "Good. Maybe that means he'll stick around long enough to bake the next one." And for the first time in years, the laughter that filled the house wasn't forced, wasn't defensive, it was real. The morning the news segment aired, I almost didn't watch it. I'd seen enough screens in my lifetime to know that television had a funny way of twisting things. But Greg insisted, and Rachel brought in a tray of coffee like she was hosting a watch party. Even Emily sat on the rug with a bowl of cereal, her eyes glued to the TV. The anchor's voice came through bright and polished. "In Asheville, a woman has turned her family home into something extraordinary. A care community built on forgiveness, resilience, and love." Rachel winced a little at the word forgiveness, but she didn't say anything. The footage showed the front of the house, the sign glimmering in the sun, and a small montage of our residents playing cards on the porch. Then, there I was, sitting in my armchair by the window, the same one where all this chaos began. The interviewer's voice asked, "What made you decide to turn your home into a care centre?" On screen, I smiled gently, because growing old doesn't mean losing purpose, it means passing it on. This house was built for family. I just widened the definition. The camera cut to Rachel and Greg helping residents plant flowers. Rachel's hair was tied back, and she was laughing with one of the widows like they'd known each other for years. Emily appeared next, holding a tray of lemonade cups, proudly handing them to everyone like she ran the place. Greg grinned. "Look at that," he said. "We're famous." Rachel's cheeks flushed pink. "You make it sound like I'm proud of being on TV." I raised an eyebrow. "You smiled in every shot. I think your face betrayed you." Even she had to laugh. The segment ended with a quote in white letters across the screen. "Home isn't where you grow old, it's where you grow wise." The news anchor smiled and said, "What a story. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is compassion." Greg clapped. "Now that's good marketing." Rachel threw a napkin at him. "Shut up," I chuckled. "Don't fight in front of the fans." After the broadcast, the phone didn't stop ringing. Local groups wanted to volunteer. The community college offered student interns, and even a bakery called asking if we needed weekly donations. Rachel picked up one call from a woman who said she'd been thinking of putting her own mother in a facility, but changed her mind after watching the story. She listened quietly, thanked her, and when she hung up, she looked at me. "You're helping more people than you realise." I smiled. "That's what happens when you stop hiding the truth and start living it." Greg leaned against the doorframe. "So what's next for our little empire?" I waved him off. "No empires, just peace. Maybe a few more rocking chairs." Rachel laughed. "You're never going to stop managing, are you?" "Not while there's still breath in me," I said. "And don't forget, the rent's due next week." Greg groaned. "You're killing me, Maggie." "Just keeping the economy alive," I said. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity: painting, gardening, cooking classes and community dinners. Word spread fast. We even hosted a small event for the town's seniors, and it filled the yard with laughter, music, and that wonderful smell of grilled corn and coffee cake. Rachel handled most of the planning, which surprised everyone, including herself. She coordinated schedules, managed donations, and even took a few phone interviews. She said she hated public speaking, but she never stumbled once. At the end of one long afternoon, after the last guest left and the tables were cleared, she came to sit beside me on the porch. "Mom," she said quietly, "can I tell you something?" I glanced at her. "Depends. Is it another financial proposal?" She smiled faintly. "No, just something I've been thinking about." I nodded for her to continue. "When Dad died," she said, "I was angry. Not just at him, but at you too. You stayed strong, and I didn't know how to handle that. I guess I started resenting you for being okay when I wasn't." The honesty hit me like a small, gentle punch. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. I thought controlling things, money, the house, all of it, would make me feel safe again, but it just made me mean, she said. "I'm sorry it took losing everything to see it." I reached out, resting my hand on hers. "You didn't lose everything, you just learned what was worth keeping." Her eyes shimmered in the evening light. "You're not mad at me anymore?" I shook my head. "I never was. Disappointed maybe, hurt definitely, but not mad. I've lived too long to waste time on anger." She smiled through her tears. "You always know how to make it sound simple." "It is simple," I said. "It's just not easy." Greg appeared at the doorway, wiping his hands on a towel. "You two getting emotional again? Should I bring tissues or pie?" "Pie," I said. "Tissues are for people who run out of dessert." Rachel laughed, wiping her eyes. "He's getting better at baking, you know." "He should," I said. "I trained him with shame and sarcasm. Works faster than culinary school." Greg shook his head, laughing. "You're both impossible." The three of us sat there as the sky turned gold, then pink, then blue. The garden lights flicked on automatically, casting a soft glow across the yard. Residents' voices drifted through the open windows. Stories, laughter, the soft creak of rocking chairs. Rachel leaned back and sighed. "I don't think I've felt this calm in years." "That's because you stopped trying to control everything," I said. "Control is heavy. Letting go is lighter." Greg raised his glass of lemonade. "To letting go," I lifted mine. "To learning." Rachel clinked hers against ours. "To forgiveness." We sat quietly after that, each word settling in the air like a gentle truth that didn't need to be spoken again. The wind moved through the trees, the lights glowed softly, and for once there was nothing left to fix, just something to appreciate. The morning air was crisp, and the smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. The porch swing creaked softly under my weight as I watched the sun rise over the yard. The Hensley house looked different now, not newer, just more awake. The garden beds were full of colour, the porch railing gleamed, and the laughter inside sounded like it had been waiting years to escape. Rachel stepped outside, a blanket draped over her shoulders, her hair tied back. "You're up early," she said. "Old habits," I replied, "and arthritis both get me up before the sun." She smiled and handed me a cup of tea. I made it how you like it. 2 sugars, 1 secret ingredient. Forgiveness? I asked. Patience, she said. Still working on that one. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Inside, we could hear Greg's voice faintly, trying to fix a wobbly chair and grumbling about volunteer labour laws. Rachel laughed under her breath. He actually likes it here, you know. He told me last night he hasn't felt this grounded in years. I nodded. Men do better with structure and consequences. She gave me a look. Are you calling yourself a consequence? An educational one, I said. The laughter came easily now, light, unforced, the kind that forgives before it even begins. A few minutes later, Emily came running out, still in her pyjamas, clutching her tablet. Grandma, you're on the internet again! Oh dear, I said, pretending to groan. What did I do this time? She climbed onto the swing beside me. Someone from school showed Mom's story in class. They said you're a hero. Rachel froze mid-sip. They showed that at your school? Yeah, Emily said proudly. Everyone said Grandma's a boss lady. I smiled, hiding the warmth that rose in my chest. I prefer the term executive elder, but I'll take it. Rachel shook her head. I swear, you're becoming a brand. Greg poked his head out the door. Already are! There's a guy from the paper calling later, wants to do a feature on community families that inspire change. Rachel groaned. Please tell me you're joking. He grinned. Nope, better brush your hair. I laughed quietly. Who would have thought the woman you tried to pack off to a nursing home would end up being a local celebrity? Rachel looked down, smiling. You make it sound worse every time you say it. That's because it was, I said, still smiling. But look how far we've come. The wind moved gently through the trees and the chimes on the porch sang softly. Rachel exhaled. You know, I still think about that day. The TV, the videos. I don't even recognize that version of myself anymore. That's good, I said. Means she learned something. She turned toward me. Do you ever wish you hadn't done it? The cameras, the reveal, everything? I thought about it, stirring my tea. No, because it wasn't revenge. It was perspective. You needed to see the truth to find your way back. She nodded, her eyes misty. It worked. I know, I said softly. You finally grew up. Inside, Greg shouted something about power tools being possessed. Emily giggled and ran back in to help him, leaving us alone again. Rachel leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Mom, can I tell you something weird? Is it about that hair colour you tried last month? Because I already know. She laughed, shaking her head. No, I mean, I actually like it here now. All of it. The noise, the people, the routine. It feels like home again. I looked at her for a long moment, the sunlight catching her face just right. That's because you finally started treating it like one. She smiled, the kind that comes from understanding rather than relief. You were right. Home isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn. I raised my cup in a mock toast. Took you long enough. She clinked her mug against mine. Well, you're a tough teacher. That's my job, I said. For a while, we just sat there. 2 women, one older, one learning, sharing the kind of peace that only comes after a storm has already spent its rage. A car pulled up at the curb, and Denise from Silver Grove hopped out waving a clipboard. Good morning. We're doing the monthly review. Rachel groaned. You're kidding me, already? Relax, I said. She's harmless. Bureaucratic, but harmless. Denise jogged up the steps, beaming. Mrs. Hensley, we just got approval for your community extension. Congratulations, you'll be housing 6 new residents by summer. Rachel blinked. 6? Where are we going to put 6? I grinned. You'll figure it out. You're management now. Greg appeared behind her with a screwdriver still in his hand. Did she just get promoted? Yes, I said. She's officially in charge of operations. Rachel's eyes widened. Wait, what? Denise nodded. It's true. You've been doing most of the coordination work anyway. We just made it official. Greg laughed. Look at that. You finally got the job you didn't know you wanted. Rachel ran a hand through her hair, half laughing, half panicking. You people are insane. Denise patted her shoulder. You're perfect for it. The residents love you. She sighed, defeated but smiling. Well, I guess there are worse things than being useful again. I smiled softly. There it is. The line I've been waiting to hear. Denise excused herself and Greg followed her inside to help with the inspection. Rachel stayed on the porch, still processing. You know, she said quietly, I used to think you were punishing me, but now I see you were saving me from myself. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You can call it whatever you like. I call it parenting. She laughed, wiping her eyes. You really don't stop being a mom, do you? Not even in retirement, I said. The afternoon sun warmed the porch, the air filled with chatter from inside. A few residents were setting up for their afternoon card game, and Emily's laughter floated through the open window. Rachel turned to me. You ever think about what Dad would say if he saw all this? I smiled. He'd probably ask if we were charging enough rent. She laughed so hard she had to put her mug down. The house felt lighter than it had in years. Not just because of paint or renovations, but because forgiveness had moved in permanently. I looked out across the yard where the sign gleamed in gold letters. The Hensley House, where family finds its way back. For the first time, I realised it wasn't just a slogan, it was the truth. Rachel followed my gaze and whispered, You did it, Mom. No, I said, smiling. We did. The wind carried the sound of laughter, the clink of dishes, and the faint echo of something that used to be broken, now whole again. And as I sat there, tea cooling in my hands, I thought to myself that maybe growing old wasn't about losing control at all. It was about finally knowing when to take it back and doing it with grace. The sun dipped lower behind the trees, and for a moment, the whole house glowed gold. Inside, people were laughing over dinner, the sound of plates and voices blending into something warm and real. I sat there, watching the light fade across the porch, thinking about everything that had led us here, the fights, the silence, the truth that hurt before it healed. Funny thing about revenge, it doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it looks like peace. Sometimes it sounds like laughter returning to a home that had forgotten how to hold it. I didn't win by proving my daughter wrong. I won by showing her what love looks like when it stops protecting and starts teaching. That's the real twist in all these family revenge stories. It's never about payback. It's about setting things right without breaking what's left. If you told me months ago that this house would become a symbol of forgiveness, I would have laughed. But here we are. The Hensley House standing tall, filled with people who remind each other that family isn't perfect, it's just persistent. Rachel learned what pride costs. Greg learned that kindness is cheaper than regret. And me, I learned that growing old isn't about losing your voice. It's about finally using it wisely. I looked at the sign one last time as the porch lights flicked on. The Hensley House, where family finds its way back. The wind rustled through the chimes, soft and certain, and I whispered to no one in particular, turns out wisdom makes the best revenge. If you believe real family revenge stories don't need violence to feel powerful, just honesty, heart, and a little humour, then you're in the right place. Subscribe, stay with us, and watch more stories like this one. Because around here, family drama doesn't end with hate, it ends with understanding.